Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to a virtual history tour on William Banting here on Smash the Fat. So, if you haven't heard of William Banting before, he is quite possibly the great-grandfather of low-carbohydrate diets, with the great-great-grandfather being Jean-Anthelme Brial-Savarin. William Banting obviously is the guy in the picture right now, and in his professional career, Banting and his sons were appointed as undertakers to the royal household in London during the 1800s, conducting the funerals of King George III to Queen Victoria herself. And up until the age of 65, Banting was obese at 202 pounds and 5'5", which is kind of here on me, and that gave him a BMI of 33, and he noted that he could not stop to tie his shoes and that he walked downstairs backwards to actually save his ankles. And after trying every single method of the day, from Turkish baths to low living, as they called eating in moderation back then, to reduce his weight, he found that none decreased his corpulence whatsoever. Then in August 1862, Banting's sight started to fail and his hearing became impaired. So he consulted with an eminent oral surgeon in London named Mr. William Harvey, FRCS. That's the Fellowship of the Royal College of Surgeons. Then Harvey advised him to follow a dietary system where the only rules were to abstain from bread, butter, milk, sugar, beer and potatoes, which in Banting's own words had been the main and he thought innocent elements of my subsistence, or at all events they had for many years been adopted freely, and according to Mr. Harvey they contain starch and saccharine matter tending to create fat and should be avoided altogether. And after adopting this advice, Banting lost 50 pounds in weight and 13 inches in bulk around his waist in just over a year, and said, "I have not felt better in health than now for the last 26 years. And then after this enlightening experience, Banting went about writing a pamphlet called Letter on Corpulence, which you can see on the screen now, and he addressed that to the public, which was sold all over the world, and even his last name, Banting, entered the English language, meaning to slim by avoiding sugar, starch and fat. If you do wish to read the pamphlet, there is an embedded copy on the blog, so if you head over to smashthefat.com/blog, then you can find it right there. Today, Banting is referenced to in many a diet book, from Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes in 2010 to Eat Fat and Grow Slim by Dr. Richard Mackinus in 1958. As well as books referencing Banting, there are plenty of blogs out there that have written extensively about him and what happened over those many years, most notably by the late Dr. Barry Groves on www.second-opinions.co.uk. For me, though, as I live here in London, instead of just reading the letter on corpulence and doing a regular review, I decided to actually go on a bit of a history hunt, visiting the places that Banting lived, worked and visited William Harvey, his medical advisor, as well. And with this, I'm providing you with what I like to call a virtual history tour of William Banting. And if you ever visit London, it's a nice day out where you can see all the usual sights along with these as well. Alright, so here we are at the map, and I'm going to start off where William Banting started his journey for health at Mr. William Harvey's office, which is, if you follow my mouse right here, is in the top right hand corner of the map. And if we click on here, then we find out that William Harvey's office was at 2 Soho Square, and as I mentioned before, William Harvey was William Banting's medical advisor that introduced him to his dietary system, and he was living at 2 Soho Square from 1847 to 1875. And Harvey was an aurist or otologist, a physician that specialises in ear disease, and thought that Banting's loss of hearing and sight that Banting initially went to see him about was purely from his corpulence. Harvey actually deduced his dietary system after lectures on diabetes management by the infamous Claude Bernard in Paris. He's a very well-known scientist in the Victorian era. Harvey did write a book eventually called On Corpulence in Relation to Disease, with some remarks on diet, which was published in 1872. They certainly don't make titles like that anymore, but I think they're going to make a comeback. But one quote from that book, which I thought was really interesting, was that it had been long well known that a purely animal diet greatly assisted in checking the secretion of diabetic urine, and it seemed to follow as a matter of course that the total abstinence from saccharine and farinaceous matter must drain the liver of this excess amount of glucose, and thus arrest in a similar proportion the diabetic tendency. Reflecting on this chain of argument, and knowing too that a saccharine and farinaceous diet is used to fatten certain animals, and that in diabetes the whole of the fat of the body rapidly disappears, it occurred to me that excessive obesity might be allied to diabetes as to its cause, and that if a purely animal diet was useful in the latter disease, a combination of animal food with such vegetable matters as contain neither sugar nor starch might serve to arrest this undue formation of fat. Rather interesting there from a medical doctor from about 125 years ago, about that, I know, 150 almost, about 140. But anyway, number 2 Soho Square, as it is today, is currently a vacant house that is worth about £4 million, so a pretty tidy sum. And interestingly, there is a weight loss clinic 2 buildings south of 2 Soho Square at the moment, offering fast results for a healthy trim body in just 30 minutes. Something I very much doubt if Mr. Harvey would ever offer such a thing. So moving on to the next part. So if we zoom in, if you are in London ever, this is a great walk. So you can walk from Soho Square here, and Google Maps only follows the car way, but you can walk through Soho, down through Leicester Square, just past there to St Martin's Lane, which is where Harrison and Sons Publishing Printing House was, at 45 to 46 to be exact. And as I said, this is where the letter on corpulence was actually printed, as opposed to their offices, which are at 59 Pall Mall, where they would probably have discussed contracts for publishing and printing and things like that. But anyway, Harrison and Sons were actually one of the main printers in London, printing postal stamps, banknotes, and the London Gazette as well from 1765 to 1910. So they're quite a reputable business at the time. The building today has changed somewhat into a 5-star hotel and a rather large gym as well. And unfortunately for Harrison and Sons, they were actually acquired by De La Rue in 1997 and no longer exist, which is a bit of a shame. But it's the way the cookie crumbles in business, I'm afraid. And then moving on, you can actually walk from there, and we'll come back to this marker that's just here later on. But if you walk from St Martin's Lane, then you can actually end up walking down the Mall right here, which is the main road leading to Buckingham Palace, just here. So it's a really nice walk if you just sort of go down to Charing Cross, go past Trafalgar Square and everything like that, and then you walk down the Mall, and then you come back up on to Pall Mall, and that is where Harrison and Sons publishing office is. And as I mentioned before, they were a major worldwide printer of postage stamps, banknotes and things like that. But as of today, 59 Pall Mall, as you can see here, is now part of Quebec House, the London office of the government of the province of Quebec. So the Canadians have taken it over, basically. And then moving on from 59 Pall Mall, you can actually walk down this Crown Passage right here, which is actually quite a nice walk. It's sort of like a really narrow Harry Potter-ish type alleyway that's got like some nice pubs down and some old-fashioned tailors and things like that. And then, you can come back onto St. James's Street, and St. James's Street is where the Banting family actually conducted their funeral and upholstery business as well. And unfortunately, 27 St. James's Street is no longer with us, as it was bombed during World War II, which kind of sucks. But it was actually bought by The Economist and turned into The Economist Plaza. So that's where The Economist newspaper offices are. And they're sort of 1960s style buildings, which is kind of interesting. But notably, the original 27 St. James's Street would have been right next door to Boodle's, which is one of the most prestigious private members clubs in London and one of the oldest at over 250 years old. After ringing Boodle's and many other private gentlemen's clubs within the area that did exist during Banting's day and do still exist today, I haven't managed to find that William Banting was a member of any of them, which is kind of a shame, because I thought that he would have done something, that he was a well-to-do guy around about London, and he was the royal household undertaker and things like that. So I would have thought he would have been part of one of those private members clubs, but you never know, it could be a private members club around where he actually lived. So, moving on from where his actual offices are, it's quite a long walk. So if you are going to be visiting London to actually do this at all, it's about 3 miles to the next spot, which is where he lives. Now you can walk that, which will take around about 45 to 60 minutes, and it's kind of a nice walk actually, because you can go through Green Park, which is a really nice park, and then lead on to Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens, and you can sort of walk through there. It's very, very nice. And then walk up towards Bayswater, and this is where he lived in Kensington. So if I click here, this was William Banting's family residence. And when doing the initial research on Banting, I did actually think that he lived at 27 St. James's Street. But after doing a lot of digging around, especially in the British newspaper archive, it was rather clear that this was just the family business place of work, because there are many, many references to the Duke of Wellington's funeral, and that you could get tickets from 27 St. James's Street with Banting and Sons, which is rather interesting. But when they moved to number 4, the Terrace, isn't exactly clear, because I found out that in 1841, in the 1841 census, the family did actually live on Craven Street, which is, if I zoom out a little bit more, is actually this marker just here. So they actually lived near more sort of Charing Cross and everything. But then in the 1851 census, I actually found out that that they moved to number 4, the Terrace, with 5 of their children, because originally they had 7 children when they were living at Craven Street, but 2 of them had moved on from marrying and moving elsewhere, and that was Thomas and Mary, which is rather interesting. But the Terrace was in Kensington back in the day, and is actually now called Porchester Gardens, and is part of the city of Westminster rather than Kensington, which changed to, or sort of was absorbed by, Porchester Gardens. Because if I zoom in here, you can see that the road there is actually called Porchester Gardens, and that was actually changed on 24th of October 1879, and that was all thanks to thehunthouse.com. This guy told me where to go and things like that, so that was cool. And then on maps of how it was back in the 1800s, that I found on old-maps.co.uk, what was also unclear with Banting's house was which was actually his, as the majority of the street is now a shopping centre named Whiteley's, which was built in 1911, and the numberings have all changed and things like that. There are a row of 6 houses there at the moment, which undoubtedly used to be the terrace. However, from old maps, it is unclear at this time which way the order of the houses actually went, either east to west or west to east. But back in Banting's day, there did actually used to be 9 houses in the terrace, but from somewhere between 1896 and 1916, the 3 most westerly houses actually disappeared. So more than likely they were acquired in the building of the Whiteley shopping centre and then built upon, basically. However, in light of all this, it means that Banting's family residence is still standing today, either the 4th from west to east, or the first easterly house being the 4th in the row of the original 9. And the reason that this is rather important, and that it needs more research as well, is because we can actually apply for a blue commemorative plaque to be put up by English Heritage, to be put up in William Banting's honour. So it's kind of an important thing to try and find out. And we'll also be doing that for William Harvey's office and home at 2 Soho Square as well, trying to get a blue commemorative plaque up there as well. And then on a side note, finally, there were bombings in this area during World War II, but from bombsite.org, they narrowly missed the 6 houses. It's sort of like just north of the actual houses and just south, so rather lucky there that we still have William Banting's house still standing. And then the final bit of our virtual tour is William Banting's grave. Now, I know, very, very sad, but unfortunately that's the way life goes. And again, it's about 3 miles away, so it's quite a long walk, especially if you've done the 3 miles previous from his office to where he was living. And it's not quite as picturesque as that walk either, so I recommend getting the tube or a bus. But yeah, when you come down to Brompton Cemetery, it's a really nice cemetery, however morbid that kind of sounds. It's very picturesque, and it's got a grand old gate and things like that. And finding Banting's grave actually took us 2 hours initially, because all we had to go on was a photograph of the grave from findagrave.com. So that took us absolutely ages to find. Firstly, we thought it was in the south of the cemetery, but eventually we did find it in section M. So if you ever do go there, go to section M, but the place marker on this map is pretty accurate as to where the actual grave is, but there are maps there at the cemetery, so if you do go, look for section M and you'll find it in there. If you use a photo as well, you'll be able to recognise it, which is all good. But it wasn't just Banting that was buried there. There was also his wife Mary Ann and his daughter Amelia, and the actual gravestone says, "In memory of Mary Ann, wife of William Banting of Kensington, who died October 21st, 1862, aged 69 years. Also of Amelia, his daughter of the above, who died May 31st, 1864, aged 39 years. Also of William Banting, husband and father of the above, who died March 16th, 1878 in his 82nd year. So quite nice that they all kind of ended up together. I don't know why it was only Amelia that was buried with them, but obviously she died quite young at 39. So yeah, maybe it was because of that. But the main thing is that we found his grave. So if you do wish to pay your respects to William Banting, you can go there. And that concludes our virtual history tour of William Banting in London, at least. I'm sure he was relatively well travelled, but those are all the main places in London. And as you can see here, it's a pretty good tour that manages to allow you to kind of go past all of the main sites in London. Anyway, so you've got Oxford Street just up here and Soho where a lot of bars are, then you've got Leicester Square and Covent Garden, then Trafalgar Square, Charing Cross, and then you've got the Mall leading to Buckingham Palace, and then you can walk back up to where the publishing office was, as well as his office, which is pretty interesting. And you can walk through Hyde Park, Kensington Gardens, up to where his family residence was, and then finally down past Earl's Court if you want to drop in there. That's really good to see. And then finally ending in Brompton Cemetery, which is really, really good. So that's all we have time for with the virtual history tour on William Banting. So if you did enjoy this virtual history tour, make sure that you put a comment in the comment section below and give us a thumbs up as well. If you want to find out more on William Banting, you can head over to our blog by going to smashthefat.com/Banting. That'll take you to the blog post that's there. And also, if you want to read his letter on corpulence, if you head over to smashthefat.com/corpulence, then you'll be able to read his original pamphlet right there. And then if you want to follow me, myself, on Twitter, you can head over to twitter.com/Sam Feltham, and then be sure to like us on Facebook as well at facebook.com/smashthefat. So until next time, guys, be well, and of course, smash it out. Oh yeah, guys, just so you know, the letter on corpulence is actually out of copyright now, so you can actually distribute it for free, meaning that I have the opportunity to do an audio book version of the letter on corpulence, which I'll be doing over the coming weeks. So be sure to subscribe to this very YouTube channel where you can get it, or subscribe to our iTunes podcast by going to smashthefat.com/iTunes, and you can subscribe right there. Anyway, guys, be well, and of course, smash it out.